What if the thought telling you to quit is not actually your thought? What if it is only an impression passing through your mind? A thought can appear without permission, but your response to it always requires a choice. And what if the real mistake you have been making for years is treating every thought like an instruction, believing that because something crossed your mind it must be obeyed, believing that the loudest voice in your head automatically deserves the final vote? Epictetus taught his students to make a distinction that changes everything about what happens between a thought and an action. A thought and a command are not the same event. One arrives on its own, uninvited, unfiltered. The other requires your permission before it can move you anywhere at all. By the end of this video, you will understand why the old Stoics believed the urge to escape difficulty could actually become the exact ground where character gets built, not avoided. Built deliberately, slowly, through repeated small decisions nobody else will ever see you make. And you will understand why the phrase "never quit," the way most people throw it around, is actually a misunderstanding of what these philosophers were teaching in the first place. This is not a video about continuing blindly. It is a video about learning when continuing is wise and when it isn't. There is a difference between persistence and stubbornness. A difference most motivational content never bothers to explain, because the difference is inconvenient. It requires nuance. It requires actually thinking, instead of simply repeating a slogan until it loses all its meaning. Stay with me. This is not going to be the video you expect it to be. Most videos with a title like this one give you noise, loud music, a voice yelling at you to never give up no matter what. 10 seconds of real insight stretched across 20 minutes of repetition, dressed up as depth. This is not that video. We are going to turn several core Stoic ideas into 10 practical stages of mental training. Real concepts, not slogans printed on a gym wall. Concepts that Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca actually used to govern themselves through genuinely difficult circumstances. Not hypothetical difficulty, real difficulty. Marcus Aurelius carried the weight of an empire through wars and political instability, while enduring serious personal loss along the way. Epictetus taught freedom of mind after spending years of his life enslaved, before eventually gaining his freedom and becoming a teacher himself. Seneca wrote some of his clearest philosophy while living under the constant threat of exile and political danger under an unpredictable emperor. None of them discovered peace by pretending hardship wasn't real. None of them told their students to simply think positive and the difficulty would dissolve. They discovered something more durable than that. They changed their relationship to their own thinking. And that distinction is the entire foundation this video is built on. That is what this video is actually about. Not forcing yourself forward through sheer willpower alone. You feel tired, and almost instantly your mind hands you a thought. Stop, that's enough. You've done enough today. Here is the trap. You treat that thought as truth the moment it appears. But ask yourself something uncomfortable. Is that thought actually true, or is it simply present? Epictetus taught his students that the mind constantly receives impressions. A feeling, a sensation, a conclusion that seems to arrive fully formed. But an impression is only the first step in a short chain. The impression appears. Then the mind interprets it. Then you either give it your agreement or you withhold it. Only after that does any action follow. Most people skip straight from the first step to the last without ever noticing the 2 steps hiding in between. Think about your phone buzzing during focused work. The urge to check it feels urgent, almost involuntary, like something outside your control reaching in and grabbing your attention by force. But the urge is not the same thing as the action that follows it. Between the impression and the response there is a gap. A small, quiet space most people never notice because they've never been taught to look for it. And inside that gap is the only freedom you actually have. The same is true for the thought that shows up at minute 40 of a workout telling you it's enough. Or the thought that shows up on page 3 of a difficult assignment whispering that you're not cut out for this. These thoughts arrive with tremendous confidence. But confidence was never proof of truth. Tonight, when your mind says stop before you're finished, don't argue with it. Arguing gives it more authority than it deserves. Don't obey it either. Simply notice it the way you'd notice weather passing outside a window. Ask one question. Is this fact? Or is this only an impression asking for my agreement? But if a thought is not automatically a command, then what decides whether you follow it? That question leads somewhere deeper. Here is where most people quit without realizing why. They chase a result. The result doesn't arrive on schedule, and they interpret the delay as proof that the entire effort was wasted. This distinction sits near the foundation of Epictetus's teaching. Some things are within your power, your judgment, your effort, your choice in this moment. Other things are not. The response of other people, the timing of results, whether the outside world cooperates with your plans. You were never promised the outcome, you were only ever given the task. Think about sending out job applications for months without a single reply. The silence starts to feel personal after enough time passes. The temptation is to conclude that you are simply not good enough, and that the whole effort was misguided from the start. But the applications themselves were the task. Writing them well, sending them out, following up where appropriate. The employer's response was never yours to control in the first place. It never was. Judging yourself by something outside your own authority will always end in unnecessary suffering that has nothing to do with your actual worth. Tomorrow morning, ask yourself one honest question before you begin anything difficult. What part of this is actually mine to control? Do that part completely. Release the rest. Because once you stop demanding guaranteed results before you'll commit to effort, you're left with a much harder question. What happens when effort itself starts to feel unbearable? Difficulty and danger feel identical inside your body, but they are not the same thing. Seneca deliberately practiced short periods of poverty on purpose. Simple food, a hard bed, fewer comforts than his position could have easily afforded him, not because suffering was noble in itself. He wanted proof that his peace of mind did not actually depend on the comforts he had quietly grown to assume he needed. That is the deeper lesson. Comfort has a way of becoming a requirement without you ever agreeing to the terms. Consider the modern version of this. A single uncomfortable conversation gets avoided for months because avoiding it feels easier in the moment. But the discomfort of having the conversation was never actually dangerous. It only felt that way because your nervous system doesn't naturally separate emotional discomfort from real threat. This week, choose one small discomfort on purpose, not to punish yourself, to test the assumption. Eat a simpler meal than you normally would. Sit through an evening without entertainment. Have the delayed conversation. Tolerate a minor inconvenience instead of immediately solving it. Notice that you survive it. Because if comfort has quietly become your master, there's a second question waiting right behind it. What happens the day comfort simply isn't available to you? And more importantly, what happens the day you're finally forced to face what you failed at? An event happened, and somewhere between the event and your next thought, you turned it into a verdict about who you are. The Stoics separated these two things sharply. What happened is simply what happened. What you decide it means about you is a completely separate act of judgment. And judgment is always yours to revise. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly examined the judgments he placed on events. The event itself was one thing, the mind's interpretation of it was another. He returned to that separation again and again while governing through circumstances he could not control. The event itself carries no built-in meaning. The meaning is something the mind adds afterward. Think about a rejected proposal at work. The rejection is an event. I am not capable is a judgment. And that judgment was never actually inside the rejection itself. You added it, which means you can also remove it. Next time something goes wrong, ask yourself precisely what happened without the story attached. Then ask separately what you're choosing to conclude from it. You'll often find the two don't match at all. But if failure isn't proof of who you are, then something else becomes the real question. What exactly are you supposed to do the moment right after it happens? The future feels enormous the moment you try to hold all of it at once. Every unfinished goal, every unresolved fear, every possible outcome stacked on top of each other in your mind simultaneously. Marcus Aurelius returned again and again to a simple discipline. Focus on the task directly in front of you. Not the entire campaign, not the entire empire. The present task was where his responsibility had to begin. This sounds almost too simple until you actually try applying it under real pressure. Consider someone facing a project that feels completely overwhelming from a distance. Months of work, dozens of moving pieces, a deadline that seems to shrink every time they check the calendar. The whole thing cannot be done today. It was never supposed to be done today. Only the next visible piece of it was ever actually due this morning. So stop measuring your day against the entire mountain. Measure it against the next action only. Open the document. Make the call. Take the single step actually available to you right now. Because once the future stops overwhelming you, a quieter question starts to surface. Whose opinion of your progress are you actually trying to satisfy? Somewhere along the way you started outsourcing your confidence, waiting to see whether people believed in the path before you allowed yourself to fully commit to it. Epictetus taught that praise and blame both belong to other people. They are externals, owned by the person giving them, not by you. Building your peace on something you don't control will always leave you unstable. Think about how often a good decision gets delayed simply because it hasn't been approved by everyone around you yet. A career change, a creative project, a relationship boundary that needed setting months ago. Their doubt may actually contain something useful. It might be worth examining. But their approval was never something you controlled in the first place. Examine the judgment. Take whatever information is genuinely useful. Release the rest. This does not mean ignoring wise counsel. It means recognizing the difference between useful feedback and someone else's comfort with your ambition. Stop asking whether people believe in what you're building before you continue building it. Let your consistency become the only argument you ever need to make. But approval from others was never really the deepest form of trust you needed. There's a harder kind of trust still waiting, the trust you owe yourself. Every broken promise to yourself teaches your own mind something quiet and dangerous, that your word doesn't actually mean anything when nobody else is watching. Character was not what you intended to be. It was what your choices repeatedly revealed. A pattern built in private moments nobody else will ever witness. Consider the difference between someone who works out only when motivated and someone who works out because they said they would. The second person is building something the first person never will. Not muscle first. Trust first. Stop making enormous promises you already suspect you won't keep. Make smaller ones instead. Then actually keep them. 10 focused minutes. 1 difficult page. 1 honest conversation. Small and kept beats large and abandoned every single time. Because self-trust changes how you experience difficulty. But keeping your word to yourself only matters if you can also survive the waiting that comes after. You control the effort you put into today. You do not control how quickly tomorrow decides to reward it. The Stoics practiced something close to patience without passivity, acting fully in the present while accepting that timing was never actually theirs to command. Seneca wrote extensively about how quickly people waste the present moment worrying about a future they can't yet touch, while forgetting how limited their actual time is. Your time is genuinely limited. That is exactly why it makes so little sense to spend today's attention demanding tomorrow's result instead of simply doing today's work. Think about how often frustration shows up, not because nothing is happening, but because it isn't happening on the schedule you privately expected. The work may already be underway beneath the surface. Impatience simply can't see it yet. Do the next right action today without demanding proof that it will pay off by a specific date. That demand was never yours to make in the first place. But patience alone isn't the full lesson. What happens the day you actually fail despite doing everything right? Failure is not permission to abandon the practice. It's simply the next data point inside it. The Stoics treated setbacks as material for continued training rather than evidence to stop training altogether. A single missed day was never treated as proof the entire discipline had failed. Consider someone who breaks a 2-month streak of consistent work with 1 missed week caused by illness or simple exhaustion. The temptation is to treat the entire streak as ruined and wait for some perfect future moment to restart cleanly. Monday, the 1st of the month. A fresh notebook. But the only thing actually required is returning tomorrow. Not next month. Not after some symbolic reset. Tomorrow, the longer the distance between the failure and the return, the more comfortable staying away becomes. So don't create ceremony around starting over. Simply resume the practice as soon as you're able to. The Stoic does not need a perfect record. He needs the discipline to return to practice. This brings us to the final principle, and it is the one that changes the entire meaning of everything you've just heard. Here is where the phrase "never quit" needs to be corrected. Never quit does not mean never change direction. It does not mean repeating a failing strategy forever out of stubborn pride. Persistence and stubbornness are not the same virtue wearing different clothes. One is wisdom applied consistently. The other is ego refusing to look at evidence. Imagine a business failing under its current approach after years of honest effort. Stoicism does not say keep doing the exact same thing regardless of the results piling up in front of you. It says something far more precise and far more demanding. Change the strategy, change the method, change the expectation entirely if the evidence calls for it. But do not abandon discipline. Do not abandon courage. Do not abandon honest reasoning about what's actually in front of you, no matter how uncomfortable that honesty becomes. What you are never permitted to quit is virtue itself. For the Stoics, virtue did not mean being morally perfect. It meant developing wisdom to judge clearly, courage to face what is genuinely difficult, justice in how you treat other people, and temperance in how you govern your own impulses. The outcome was never guaranteed to any Stoic in history. Not to Marcus Aurelius, not to Epictetus, not to Seneca. What they controlled was whether they remained the kind of person they intended to be while pursuing it. So hold these four separately in your mind. The outcome can be lost. The strategy can be changed. The goal itself can sometimes be abandoned if it no longer serves you. But virtue must remain. That is the climax of everything we've covered. The real Stoic question was never whether you achieved the result. It was whether you stayed in command of your own character while chasing it. So here is what this video was actually about. Not forcing yourself to never stop, no matter what the circumstances demand. Learning to distinguish an impression from a fact before you let it steer your entire day. Learning what genuinely belongs to you and what never did in the first place. Learning that discomfort is not automatically danger, even when your body insists otherwise. Learning that failure is an event and never an identity, unless you're the one who hands it that title. Learning to shrink an overwhelming future into the single action sitting directly in front of you right now. Learning that approval from others was never actually yours to chase or wait for. Learning that your word to yourself is the quiet foundation everything else in your life gets built on top of. Learning to let time take the time it genuinely needs without demanding an early answer. Learning to return immediately after a fall without staging some dramatic ceremony around it. And learning that the only thing you are truly forbidden from abandoning is your own character. This was never a motivation video pretending to have depth. It was a philosophy lesson disguised as one the entire time. You do not need to control tomorrow. You need to govern yourself today. That single shift changes almost everything about how difficulty feels. Your mind can tell you to quit. Your circumstances can tell you that you have already lost. Other people can tell you the entire thing is impossible before you've even finished explaining it to them. Let them speak. None of them get the final word. Your task is simpler than all of that noise combined. Judge clearly. Act deliberately. Accept what you cannot control without wasting energy fighting it. And never abandon the character you are quietly trying to build, one ordinary decision at a time. That is Stoicism, not a slogan, a practice. If this changed how you think about quitting even slightly, comment 3 words below. I control my response. I read every one. Subscribe to Stoic Virtus so the next lesson finds you when you need it. And if someone in your life needs to hear this today, send it to them now. not later. You were never asked to control the outcome, only to remain the one governing yourself inside it.